The fluorescent hum of the cafeteria, a steady, oppressive drone beneath the raucous symphony of clattering trays and uninhibited adolescent laughter, offered no solace, no sense of belonging to Alara Vance. She sat alone at a corner table, a solitary island amidst a boisterous, churning sea of teenagers. Her lunch, a meticulously packed sandwich, turkey and provolone on whole wheat, with a crisp slice of Granny Smith apple tucked beside it, lay untouched on the tray. It was a precise, unvarying meal, mirroring the quiet order she imposed on her chaotic internal world. Her movements were small, almost imperceptible, as if she perpetually wished to compress herself out of existence, to blend seamlessly into the beige walls, to become a whisper in the echoing hall. Her gaze, however, was anything but passive or shy. It possessed an extraordinary intensity, a quiet, almost hungry absorption of every detail around her. It drifted from the lazy dance of dust motes suspended in the slanted shafts of sunlight filtering through the grimy windows, to the intricate, almost fractal patterns formed by spilled soda on the scuffed linoleum floor, to the fleeting, unguarded expressions on a classmate's face. A flicker of raw annoyance, a spark of unadulterated joy, a carefully constructed mask of feigned indifference. Her eyes, the color of deep moss after a spring rain, absorbed every nuance, cataloging the subtle imperfections and unnoticed beauty of the mundane world. This was her language, her unique way of seeing, her silent form of communication, even as she remained an enigmatic ghost in the vibrant, sprawling tapestry of high school life. Her worn canvas backpack, its fabric faded to a muted gray from countless washes, rested beside her like a loyal, silent sentinel, and she held a battered, unassuming sketchbook clutched close to her chest, like a sacred text or a delicate shield against the relentless onslaught of sound, expectation, and casual cruelty that permeated her days. Within its pages lay her true world, a universe of intricate lines and burgeoning secrets, a world she rarely shared, even with herself. She typically devoured her lunch with efficient, unthinking movements, then retreated to the hushed sanctity of the school library, a sanctuary where the only sounds were the rustle of turning pages and the soft tapping of keyboards. Or, on warmer, sunnier days, she would seek out a secluded bench nestled deep within the school garden, hidden beneath the sprawling branches of an old oak tree, finding solace in the silent communion with nature's own complex designs. Today, however, a small, poignant disruption kept her tethered to the cafeteria's overwhelming chaos, a silent anchor that refused to let her drift away. Across the room, at a table overflowing with crumpled construction paper, discarded crayon nubs, and brightly colored markers, a younger student, no older than 10, sat hunched over a poster board almost as large as he was. His small shoulders were slumped with the crushing weight of profound artistic failure. Tears welled in his large brown eyes, threatening to spill over and trace paths through the smudges of ink already marring his cheeks. He gripped a marker, its felt tip hopelessly mashed from frustration, staring forlornly at his crumpled attempts to draw the school mascot, a leaping tiger, for the upcoming pep rally. His tiger looked less like a fearsome, agile predator and more like a lumpy, striped cat, its limbs disproportionate, its expression bewildered. His classmates, engrossed in their own noisy projects or boisterous conversations, seemed utterly oblivious to his quiet despair, their focus entirely inward. Alara watched him, a familiar pang of quiet, almost visceral empathy stirring within her. She knew that feeling, the knot of inadequacy that tightened in one's stomach, the burning frustration of trying to translate an image from one's mind to the page, only to have it stubbornly refuse to cooperate. She understood the unspoken yearning for something to simply work, to manifest as envisioned. It was a feeling she experienced often, even with her own complex artistic visions. Without a moment's hesitation, a decision made purely from an innate, selfless kindness that bypassed her usual social anxieties, she slipped her hand into her backpack. She pulled out a fresh sheet of printer paper, salvaged from the art room's recycling bin during her brief, solitary visits there, and a finely sharpened graphite pencil, its lead gleaming like a tiny, polished spear. Her gaze lingered on the younger boy's struggling form for only a second longer, absorbing the angle of his head, the tension in his small shoulders, the exact despair in his eyes. Then, with a fluid, almost ethereal grace that seemed to defy the clumsiness of her own movements in the real world. Her hand moved across the paper. The pencil, a mere extension of her will, seemed to dance across the page. With astonishing speed and precision, she sketched. Not a static, posed tiger, like the rigid, almost taxidermied images Mr. Harrison favored in his art history lectures. No, Alara's tiger was a creature caught in mid-leap, muscles rippling beneath invisible stripes, tail arcing in a perfect counterbalance to its powerful forward momentum. Its eyes, though rendered with only a few simple strokes, held a fierce, determined spark, capturing the predatory grace and wild spirit of the animal. It was vibrant, alive, a whirlwind of dynamic energy rendered in elegant lines on the page. In less than 30 seconds, the drawing was complete, a masterpiece of economical line work and vibrant form, a testament to her uncanny ability to distill the essence of a subject into its most fundamental, expressive components. She didn't sign it. She didn't linger for a moment, didn't seek recognition or thanks. As the bell for the next class began its shrill symphony, signaling the chaotic exodus from the cafeteria, Ilara rose from her table. She walked past the younger boy's table, her movements as quiet as a whisper, almost unheard amidst the shuffling feet and excited chatter. With a subtle, almost imperceptible flick of her wrist, a gesture honed by years of silent observation, she slipped the drawing onto his desk, beneath the edge of his poster board, before anyone noticed, before any thanks could be offered, before any awkward interaction could ensue. Then, she melted seamlessly into the outgoing tide of students, her presence as fleeting and elusive as a dream. The younger boy, gathering his scattered art supplies, discovered the drawing. His tears instantly ceased, replaced by a look of bewildered wonder that slowly transformed into a wide, joyous smile. He picked up the sketch, his small fingers tracing the powerful, dynamic lines of the leaping tiger. It was perfect. It was exactly what he had envisioned, but could not create. He didn't know who had drawn it, didn't know who had seen his silent struggle, and offered such a profound, anonymous gift. But the mysterious drawing transformed his entire afternoon, chasing away the shadows of artistic failure and giving him the courage, the inspiration, to try again, to incorporate this newfound vision into his own clumsy attempts. This small, anonymous act of unexpected kindness and profound artistic insight was Alara's save the cat moment, a silent testament to her intrinsic goodness, her innate compassion, and her quiet, unacknowledged brilliance. It instantly endeared her to the reader, showing that beneath her unassuming, almost invisible exterior lay a heart of gold and a hand guided by an extraordinary, almost preternatural talent. The reader, knowing the depth of her artistic skill, instantly rooted for her, understanding the injustice of the world's casual disregard for her presence. Deep within Alara's worn backpack, nestled amongst her few textbooks, a dog-eared copy of a fantasy novel and a half-eaten granola bar, lay her most prized possession, the battered, unassuming sketchbook. Its canvas cover was scuffed and frayed at the edges, its spine held together by faded tape, its pages dog-eared from countless hours of handling and rereading. But within its humble confines, a secret world unfurled, a universe far richer and more complex than the one she inhabited daily. These pages were filled not with idle scribbles or conventional landscapes, the kind Mr. Harrison preferred. No, these pages held something far more enigmatic and profound. Interspersed with a handful of hauntingly realistic portrait studies and precise anatomical drawings were unusual, almost abstract symbols and intricate repetitive patterns. They swirled and interconnected with a dizzying complexity, sometimes resembling ancient calligraphy, other times complex crystalline structures, or the delicate branching forms of frost on a winter windowpane. They possessed an odd, almost ancient resonance, a sense of timelessness, drawn with an uncanny precision that defied her youth and lack of formal, traditional training. These patterns frequently appeared in the margins of her school notebooks, often hidden beneath other, more conventional sketches or hastily scrawled notes from lectures she barely registered. They were drawn with an almost unconscious fluidity, an instinctive movement of her hand, appearing most prominently when she was deeply concentrated, emotionally stirred by a piece of music or a quiet observation, or simply lost in thought during a particularly dull lecture. They were a spontaneous overflow of a unique inner vision. Her classmates, if they ever caught a fleeting glimpse of these pages during a hurried transition between classes, dismissed them as aimless scribbles, the whimsical musings of a dreamy, introverted girl. They were just doodles, something to fill time, meaningless distractions. Mr. Harrison, her art teacher, with his rigid adherence to traditional techniques, his unwavering belief in classical realism and academic forms, would have scoffed at them with barely concealed contempt as a waste of valuable paper, an indication of undisciplined artistic focus, and a lack of true talent. But in reality, these were not just random marks or casual scribbles. They were something far more. They were a nascent form of a forgotten, powerful artistic language, a coded representation of a unique perception of reality that she was unconsciously channeling. They were a visual manifestation of a rare form of synesthesia, an innate neurological ability to perceive abstract concepts, complex mathematical theorems, or even profound emotional states as intricate, multidimensional patterns. It was a profound, almost preternatural artistic talent she herself did not yet fully comprehend, a language she spoke without knowing its grammar. She had a peculiar habit, when she thought no one was watching her, when she felt truly alone and unobserved, of meticulously outlining these symbols and patterns with a fine-tipped pen, adding layers of minute detail, almost as if she were decoding them rather than creating them. She would murmur to herself about resonant frequencies, harmonic symmetries, or the interconnectedness of form and spirit in a hushed, intense tone, a language understood only by her own profound internal world, a whisper of a universal truth. She might pause mid-thought, her gaze drifting upwards to the intricate cracks in the classroom ceiling, or the way sunlight fractured through a dusty window pane, illuminating motes of dancing dust, and with a grimy finger, she'd trace an invisible pattern on the worn surface of her desk, lost in some unseen connection between the mundane geometry of the physical world and the profound artistic truth she was striving to unlock, to bring into being. She wasn't daydreaming or rambling. She was observing, calculating, synthesizing, her mind forging links that others missed, links that allowed her to refine her intricate, visually coded designs, to build a lexicon of a forgotten language. These designs, dismissed by casual observers as the eccentric ramblings of a troubled mind or the whimsical musings of a naive idealist, actually held the key to a massive, hidden artistic breakthrough. Her sketchbook was a living document of a genius quietly unfolding, a testament to a truth waiting to be seen, creating profound curiosity and laying the groundwork for the later revelation of her extraordinary, perhaps even historically significant, artistic talent, and the profound secret within its pages. The patterns were not merely art. They were a window into a forgotten language, a bridge between the seen and the unseen, a secret waiting to stun the art world, to redefine its very foundations. And Alara, the quiet girl in the corner, was its unwitting conduit. The rhythmic scratching of chalk on the blackboard, a sound typically soothing in its familiarity, grated on Alara Vance's nerves this particular Tuesday afternoon. Mr. Harrison, his back to the class, was meticulously diagramming the principles of chiaroscuro, his booming voice echoing the unyielding linearity of his instruction. He was a man carved from academic stone, his artistic philosophy as rigid and unyielding as the classical sculptures he so revered. For him, art was a defined, measurable discipline, a skill honed through precise replication and adherence to established techniques. Anything outside these boundaries, anything that dared to defy convention, was, to him, either childish fantasy or outright incompetence. He wore a tweed jacket, perpetually, even in the stuffy classroom, its elbows worn thin from years of leaning over easels, a sartorial declaration of his unwavering commitment to tradition. His gray hair, thinning at the crown, was always immaculately combed, each strand a testament to his ordered world. Alara sat at her desk, ostensibly taking notes, but her hand, possessed by an impulse far beyond the dictates of Mr. Harrison's lecture, moved almost unconsciously beneath the desk, hidden by the desk's lip and the long sleeve of her sweater. Her sketchbook, the one she clutched so protectively, lay open on her lap. Her gaze was fixed on a particularly dull spot on the classroom wall, a patch of peeling paint that, to her unique vision, pulsed with an unseen energy, manifesting as a complex, almost three-dimensional pattern of interlocking lines and subtle shifts in color. She was not bored. She was observing, translating. The lecture on chiaroscuro, a technique of dramatic light and shadow, felt painfully superficial, missing the inherent, living light she perceived in everything. As Mr. Harrison droned on about Renaissance masters, Alara's pencil danced across the page, capturing the unseen dynamic flow of energy in the mundane, creating patterns that were intricate, mesmerizing, and utterly unlike anything he taught. The air in the classroom, thick with the scent of chalk dust and old paper, seemed to vibrate with Mr. Harrison's mounting irritation. He paused, his back stiffening, as a subtle, almost imperceptible scrape of graphite on paper reached his ears. A sound he associated with undisciplined scribbling. He had been growing increasingly frustrated with Alara. She was quiet, yes, but her quietness was not one of respectful attention. It was a detached, almost ethereal quality that spoke of a mind utterly elsewhere. He had noticed the way her gaze often drifted, the way she seemed to exist in a world entirely of her own making, even during his most profound pronouncements on true art. Her submission for the upcoming classical still life project, a technically perfect but emotionally inert charcoal drawing of a fruit bowl, had been the final straw. It was competent, but it lacked soul. It lacked the fire he knew she possessed, yet refused to express in the correct way. He mistook her unconventionality for a lack of genuine artistic discipline. He believed she was wasting her natural talent, and his valuable teaching time, on what he privately considered childish fantasies and aimless diversions. He had decided then that a public intervention was necessary, a stark lesson to bring her back into the fold of proper art. He spun around, his voice cutting through the classroom's quiet. "Alara Vance." His tone was sharp, laced with an undisguised exasperation that made several students flinch. Alara flinched too, her hand freezing, but her eyes, though wide, held a flicker of resignation, as if she had been anticipating this moment. "What, pray tell, are you doing there, young lady? Are you engaged in serious artistic study? Or are you, as I suspect, merely indulging in your usual doodling?" He strode purposefully towards her desk, his movements stiff with controlled anger. The entire class turned, a wave of nervous whispers rippling through the room. Alara's face flushed a deep crimson, the heat stinging her cheeks. Her heart began to thump a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She felt the familiar agonizing pull to retreat, to shrink into herself until she became invisible. Before she could utter a single word, before she could even attempt to hide her work, Mr. Harrison was upon her. His hand, strong and unhesitating, snatched her sketchbook from her lap. The soft thump as he closed it echoed loudly in the sudden horrified silence of the classroom. He held it up, a trophy of disciplinary triumph. "This is what I mean, class," he declared, his voice ringing with a false joviality that masked his irritation. He flipped open the sketchbook, holding it aloft, its pages splayed open to reveal not her recent doodles, but a particularly elaborate, almost otherworldly collection of the abstract symbols and intricate, repetitive patterns that so fascinated her. They swirled and interlocked across the page, a dense tapestry of lines and shapes, undeniably beautiful to an unbiased eye, but utterly alien to Mr. Harrison's traditionalist sensibilities. He snorted, a derisive sound. "Look at this! While we are discussing the nuanced application of shadow and light, Ms. Vance is preoccupied with this." He gestured wildly at the open sketchbook, as if presenting a specimen from a freak show. "Meaningless lines, childish fantasies, a complete lack of focus. This, children, is not art. This is a distraction, a waste of talent, a waste of paper, and a waste of valuable classroom time." He slammed the sketchbook shut, the sound a sharp physical blow that resonated in Alara's chest. "Ms. Vance," he continued, his voice dripping with condescension, "you will learn to appreciate proper art forms. You will learn to discipline your imagination. Until then, I shall hold on to this scribble book." He held the sketchbook tightly in his grip, almost possessively. This public shaming, designed to crush her spirit and artistic confidence, directly attacked her most vulnerable and cherished private world, reducing her deepest passion to a mere scribble book. Alara's initial reaction was a familiar, suffocating wave of crushing embarrassment and profound shame. Her eyes stung with unshed tears, her vision blurring at the edges. She wished the floor would open up and swallow her whole. The stares of her classmates felt like physical blows. Their hushed whispers, though indistinct, felt like sharp accusations. She feared the ridicule, the judgment from her peers, and the painful confirmation of her own perceived inadequacy, the constant, nagging voice in her head that told her she didn't quite fit, that her way of seeing was somehow wrong. She felt the familiar pull to retreat further into herself, to never again expose her private world to the harsh light of judgment. The overwhelming urge was to escape, to run and hide, to erase the memory of this public humiliation and never draw another line again. However, as Mr. Harrison continued his condescending lecture, holding her sketchbook like a dirty rag, ridiculing her doodles as meaningless lines and childish fantasies, a different emotion began to stir within her. A quiet yet fierce defiance, like a spark igniting in dry tinder. He had touched a raw nerve, disrespecting not just her drawings, but the very essence of her being, her unique way of seeing and expressing the world. His words were not just an attack on her skill, they were an attack on her soul. This incident awakened a dormant resilience, a quiet, unyielding rage that had simmered beneath her passive exterior for years. It was a fierce, protective instinct towards her art, towards the unseen beauty she knew existed, even if others couldn't perceive it. She felt a desperate, almost primal need to reclaim her sketchbook, not just for personal pride, but because it held a truth, a potential, a secret language that Mr. Harrison, in his narrow, prejudiced view, could never comprehend. Her art was not a distraction. It was the very core of her existence. He had dared to call her truth meaningless. Mr. Harrison, perhaps fueled by his apparent success in disciplining Alara and a desire to reinforce his authority and artistic dogma, decided to take a further, more damaging action. He strode back to his desk, placed the confiscated sketchbook on top of a stack of graded papers, and announced, his voice ringing with a false sense of triumph, that he would keep Alara's sketchbook until she learns to appreciate proper art forms and demonstrates a willingness to engage with the established masters. Crucially, as he said this, he subtly pushed the sketchbook further forward on his desk, allowing it to lie open, its pages splayed for all to see. He knew the bell for dismissal was only minutes away, and the students filing out would inevitably glimpse its contents. He casually waved his hand over the exposed doodles, dismissing them with a final, contemptuous sigh, effectively allowing other students to glimpse Alara's childish scrawlings and further cementing her public humiliation. He believed this public display would be a lasting lesson, a visible mark of her defiance and his triumph. One student, however, did not merely glance. Leo, a budding photographer with a quiet, observant nature, had always noticed Alara. He saw the way she watched the world, the subtle shifts in her expression, the way she clutched that sketchbook like a lifeline. He wasn't one to follow the crowd, often preferring the solitude of his camera lens to the boisterousness of his peers. As he gathered his own art supplies, he lingered for a moment, his gaze drawn to the open sketchbook on Mr. Harrison's desk. His eyes widened. He recognized the abstract symbols from the previous page, the ones Harrison had mocked. But on this page, a single, incredibly intricate pattern caught his attention. It wasn't just a design. It seemed to shimmer, almost to move in the harsh classroom light. He had a fleeting, visceral sense of familiarity, as if he'd seen something similar before, perhaps in a photography book on ancient cultures or in some obscure documentary. He couldn't quite place it, but it sparked a deep, unsettling curiosity within him. He quickly pulled out his phone, snapped a discreet, blurry photo of the page, a fleeting, almost impulsive act, before Mr. Harrison closed the book. He didn't know why, but something about that pattern resonated deeply within him. This public confiscation and deliberate display of her private world, combined with Leo's fleeting yet significant observation, made Alara's retreat impossible. Her most cherished possession, the repository of her truest self, was now held hostage, a public spectacle. She could not simply move on. She must now actively reclaim her artistic integrity and reveal the profound secret contained within her sketchbook. The path was set. She was forced onto a course where her hidden genius, her unique way of seeing, would inevitably be brought into the light, whether she was ready or not. The quiet girl who preferred to remain invisible was about to become an unwilling legend. The public humiliation, coupled with the confiscation of her cherished sketchbook, had left Alara Vance feeling raw and exposed. The familiar comfort of anonymity had been violently stripped away, replaced by the stinging glare of unwanted attention. Her initial reaction, a powerful, almost overwhelming urge to retreat further into herself, to disappear completely from the school's scrutinizing gaze, battled with a nascent, unfamiliar sense of defiance. Mr. Harrison, in his arrogance, had not merely taken her drawings. He had invalidated her very way of seeing the world, her unique perception of its hidden symmetries and flowing energies. That, she realized with a cold clarity, was unforgivable. For days, Alara walked the school hallways with her head down, avoiding eye contact, her shoulders hunched against the imagined whispers and the knowing glances. Lunch was now consumed in a secluded corner of the library, the rustle of pages a welcome reprieve from the echoes of laughter in the cafeteria. She found solace in the quiet geometry of the book stacks, the methodical order of the Dewey Decimal System, a stark contrast to the turbulent chaos within her. Yet, even in the sanctuary of the library, her fingers often twitched, yearning for the familiar graphite against paper, for the release that only her doodles could provide. The world, through her eyes, continued to pulse with unseen patterns, demanding to be translated, to be understood. It was during one such restless afternoon, while attempting to focus on a particularly dense algebra problem, that the impulse became irresistible. The equations on the page, linear and rigid, seemed to mock the fluidity of her own thoughts. Her gaze drifted to the worn wooden surface of the library table. A faint, almost invisible scratch, likely etched by generations of bored students, stretched across the grain. To Alara, this wasn't just a scratch. It was a nascent line, a starting point. Without conscious thought, she picked up a discarded ballpoint pen she found lying next to her textbook. She began to trace, not on paper, but directly onto the smooth, polished surface of the table. Her hand moved with an unconscious grace, following an invisible current. The abstract symbols, the intricate, repetitive patterns that filled her sketchbook, flowed effortlessly from the pen's tip. They interlocked and spiraled, coalescing into something both ancient and futuristic, a delicate dance of lines that seemed to vibrate with a quiet, hypnotic energy. It wasn't just drawing. It was a form of deep thought, a meditation, a silent conversation with the inherent order of the universe as she perceived it. Each line was precise, each curve perfectly calibrated, forming a complex tapestry that seemed to defy the simple act of doodling. The library, usually a place of hushed whispers, faded into a distant hum. She was utterly absorbed, lost in the intricate unfolding of her unique artistic language, her brow furrowed in intense, almost feverish concentration. She wasn't trying to create art for an audience. She was simply being herself, compelled by an innate, unshakable artistic drive that demanded expression, a response to a moment of quiet introspection and a compelling visual stimulus. This involuntary act, born of a deep-seated need to express herself, was her unwilling revelation. She wasn't seeking attention, wasn't trying to prove anything to Mr. Harrison or her peers. She was simply responding to the profound visual and emotional information her mind processed, translating it into the only language she truly understood. Her usual shyness was overridden by the sheer compelling force of her artistic compulsion. Only one person inadvertently witnessed this deeper revelation of Alara's unusual artistry, Leo. He had slipped into the library, seeking a quiet corner to review the dozens of photographs he'd taken for the school yearbook committee. He had recently found himself drawn to capturing fleeting, unnoticed moments, the quiet intensity in a classmate's gaze, the way light hit a forgotten corner, a reflection, perhaps, of Alara's own observational habits. He often saw her in the library, a quiet, almost ethereal presence, and his curiosity about her had only deepened since the art class incident. He had been quietly studying the blurry photo he'd taken of her sketchbook page, trying to identify the enigmatic symbols when he saw her. He watched, mesmerized, as Alara's hand moved across the wooden table, seemingly conjuring complex patterns from thin air. It wasn't just drawing, it was an act of creation that transcended conventional art. He recognized the peculiar abstract symbols from the confiscated sketchbook, but now, seeing them unfold in real time, observing the almost trance-like state she entered, the astonishing speed and almost superhuman precision of her hand, the way the abstract lines seemed to coalesce into something both ancient and futuristic, he felt a jolt of profound understanding. This was no ordinary talent. This was an artistic phenomenon. The pen wasn't merely drawing, it was channeling. He noticed the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the ambient light around her, as if the space itself was responding to the intensity of her creative energy. Leo, a budding photographer who prided himself on seeing the unseen, instinctively knew he was witnessing something extraordinary, a profound, unexplained artistic phenomenon. He quietly raised his camera, not to intrude, but to capture the raw, unadulterated essence of her creative process, the quiet power she exuded. He made no sound, simply stood in the shadows, a silent, awe-struck observer, his mind racing with the implications. Meanwhile, Mr. Harrison remained blissfully, almost defiantly, oblivious. He was in his classroom, surrounded by reproductions of classical masterpieces, meticulously planning the upcoming classical realism project. He hummed to himself, a satisfied, self-assured sound. He still considered Alara a talentless distraction, a student who needed to be broken of her bad habits and undisciplined self-expression. He believed his public humiliation of her had been a necessary step, a sharp lesson to bring her back in line. He was too consumed by his own rigid artistic dogma, too confident in his own authority, to consider that he might have missed something, or that true art could exist beyond the confines of his narrow, conventional definitions. He continued to subtly undermine Alara's abilities in class, reinforcing his Type B, misguided antagonist role by his sheer arrogance and unshakable adherence to narrow, outdated artistic dogma. He believed he was nurturing talent, when in reality, he was stifling it. Fueled by his apparent success in disciplining Alara and a desire to reinforce his authority, Mr. Harrison decided to double down on his strict, conventional curriculum. During the next art class, he announced the details of the mandatory classical realism project, a challenging assignment requiring students to meticulously replicate a famous classical painting, emphasizing precise brushstrokes, anatomical accuracy, and adherence to traditional composition. It was a project specifically designed to stifle any unconventional artistic expressions, to force students into a rigid framework, leaving no room for the abstract or the experimental. This, he declared, gesturing grandly to a projection of a Caravaggio masterpiece, is true art. This is what you should aspire to. Not meaningless lines. We are artists, not fantasists. Discipline, focus, and adherence to the timeless forms are paramount. His words, though not directly aimed at Alara, landed like subtle, well-aimed barbs. He then spent an additional 15 minutes lecturing on modern eccentricities and undisciplined self-expression, subtly mocking any form of art that veered from his prescribed path. He believed he was teaching, guiding, but in reality, he was imposing his prejudices, reinforcing a system that stifled creativity rather than fostering it. He was confident that, by the end of this project, Alara would either conform or simply give up, proving his point about her lack of serious artistic ambition. His actions further solidified his role as the Type B misguided antagonist, driven by an overabundance of arrogance, deeply ingrained prejudice against anything that challenged his narrow view of true art, and a desperate, almost pathetic need to maintain absolute control over his classroom's artistic narrative. His dismissal of Alara had escalated from a personal slight to a systemic adherence to an artistic orthodoxy that actively sought to suppress genuine, albeit unconventional, talent. He believed he was teaching her a lesson, but in reality, he was setting the stage for his own inevitable public humiliation. He remained utterly blind to the profound truth Eleanor's doodles held, utterly deaf to the silent revolution brewing in the quiet corners of his classroom, a revolution that would redefine the very nature of art. For Alara, this was the symbolic arena, the very heart of the traditional art world she was about to confront. Mr. Harrison, impeccably dressed in a new tweed jacket, its elbows still pristine, moved through the throng of attendees with a self-satisfied smile, a conductor orchestrating his masterpiece. He paused at each display, offering snippets of commentary on disciplined brushstrokes, classical composition, and timeless beauty, subtly guiding the conversation towards his preferred aesthetic. His gaze often drifted towards the large velvet-draped stand at the center of the hall, where the Best in Show award would soon be placed. He was confident of his choices, confident in the artistic education he provided, and utterly confident that no disruptive, unconventional art would steal his thunder. He saw himself as the gatekeeper of true artistic taste, the protector of classical values against the encroaching tide of meaningless modernism. Alara, on the other hand, was initially a solitary figure, almost swallowed by the elegant crowd. Her single piece, reluctantly included by Mr. Harrison after a tense negotiation with Principal Thompson, a small, unassuming canvas displaying one of her simpler, less intricate abstract patterns in muted grays and deep blues, was tucked away in a dimly lit corner, practically ignored. It seemed insignificant amidst the vibrant realism of the other student works, the meticulously rendered still lifes, and the precisely executed portraits. She hovered near it, a quiet sentinel, her arms wrapped around herself as if for comfort. She felt the weight of skepticism from the casual glances, the subtle dismissals from those who hurried past, drawn instead to the more conventional displays. While Leo, her newfound helper, was present, a comforting if distant presence amongst the crowd, quietly supportive and armed with his own photographic evidence of Alara's unique artistic process, the intellectual and emotional battle of revealing her revolutionary artwork, of directly challenging Mr. Harrison's orthodoxy, rested solely on Alara. She had to rely on the raw, undeniable power of her art, its inherent emotional resonance, and her unwavering conviction in her vision, despite the overwhelming skepticism and Harrison's scornful sidelong glances. She knew the power that lay within her doodles, a truth that went far beyond mere aesthetics, a secret waiting to be unlocked. The air thrummed with expectation, the low murmur of conversations punctuated by the clinking of glasses. Mr. Harrison had just completed his polished traditionalist opening remarks, his voice resonating with cultivated authority as he praised the discipline and adherence to timeless forms, evident in the exhibited art. He concluded by confidently predicting a future generation of artists who honor the legacy of the masters, subtly solidifying the perception that only conventional art held true value. The audience, largely composed of parents, donors, and art enthusiasts, nodded in polite agreement. This was his moment, his triumph. A prominent art critic, Ms. Evelyn Reed, a woman known throughout the city for her sharp tongue and unwavering adherence to classical art, her critiques often dissecting anything outside the classical canon with a surgical precision, approached the podium. She was elegantly dressed, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, her expression one of discerning judgment. She was about to announce the prize winners, a moment that would further cement Harrison's artistic dogma and, by extension, his authority. Alara felt the time pressure acutely. She had a narrow, self-imposed window, mere minutes, to interject, to introduce her unconventional art, and to fundamentally challenge Harrison's narrative and Reed's critical judgment. Her hands, clutched around her battered sketchbook, were clammy. The tension in the hall was amplified by the presence of Principal Thompson, a pragmatic but easily swayed administrator. He valued the school's reputation above all else and was present to ensure the smooth, prestigious running of the event. At Harrison's subtle instigation and keen to avoid any unpleasantness that might tarnish the school's image, he was prepared to dismiss any unconventional or disruptive displays that might cause controversy. He had already given a brief, polite warning to Alara earlier, urging her not to make a scene. His gaze, often flicking nervously between Mr. Harrison and the audience, was a silent plea for order. The dramatic irony in the room was almost suffocating. The hundreds of seemingly sophisticated minds in the audience, the esteemed critics, the eager parents, the influential gallery owners, and Mr. Harrison himself, were utterly oblivious to the true multi-layered war that was about to unfold. They were listening to the swan song of an old paradigm of artistic expression, completely unaware that a quiet, overlooked girl, armed with her crazy invention, her sketchbook filled with doodles, held the key to transforming the very definition of art and exposing the profound intellectual arrogance of their curator. They saw only the surface, blinded by their own prejudices and preconceptions of what art should be. Harrison, basking in the glow of the spotlights, prepared to deliver his final triumphant pronouncement, oblivious that the meaningless scribbles he had dismissed were about to become the hammer that shattered his carefully constructed world and redefined the boundaries of art forever. Ilara took a deep breath, clutching her satchel, her gaze fixed on the imposing figure at the podium. Her moment, the moment of truth, was upon her. The rhythmic clinking of crystal glasses and the polite murmur of conversation filled the grand summit hall. A deceptive calm before the storm. Mr. Harrison, a man radiating smug satisfaction, stood at the gleaming podium, bathed in the cool glow of professional spotlights. He concluded his opening remarks, his voice resonant with cultivated authority, praising the discipline and adherence to timeless forms of the exhibited art. On the immense digital display behind him, a slideshow of classical masterpieces, all meticulously copied by his star students, shimmered, a visual testament to his unyielding artistic dogma. He turned to acknowledge the polite applause, his hand already reaching for a crystal glass of water, a perfectly orchestrated moment of triumph. This was the crescendo of his artistic reign, and for a fleeting second, the sheer weight of his established dominance threatened to crush Ilara. The air crackled with the triumph of established dogma and unquestioned authority, seeming to drown out her vital truth. This was the bated breath moment for Ilara. Everything seemed to conspire against her, her profound vision seemingly lost amidst the polished rhetoric and the pervasive acceptance of Harrison's pronouncements. Just as Mr. Harrison turned, a self-satisfied smile playing on his lips, Ilara acted. A subtle digital alert, an almost imperceptible shimmer on the compact tablet hidden in her satchel, confirmed the critical moment. Her real-time atmospheric sensors, deployed hours earlier, indicated the perfect ambient light conditions for a live, visual demonstration of her art's unique properties. Her voice, initially a mere tremor of resolve, gained an unexpected clarity, cutting through the polite murmurs like a finely sharpened blade. "Mr. Harrison," she called out, stepping forward from the periphery of the audience, her simple, unadorned clothing a stark contrast to the glittering gowns and tailored suits that filled the hall. "With all due respect, your timeless forms have a fundamental oversight." A collective gasp swept through the auditorium, a ripple of astonished whispers. Alistair Finch's prior humiliation of her was not known to this audience, but her sudden, audacious interruption of such a prestigious event was itself a shock. Mr. Harrison, startled, spun around, his polished smile instantly replaced by a scowl of pure disbelief and irritation. He recognized her. "Ilara Vance," he sneered, his voice now laced with undisguised contempt, amplified by the podium microphone. "I believe we settled your childish fantasies months ago. This is hardly the time or place for your bizarre disruptions. Return to your seat." Several guests turned, their faces a mixture of embarrassment and annoyance, urging Ilara to comply with their disapproving glares. One even hissed, "Don't you dare ruin this girl. This is serious business." But Ilara stood her ground, her eyes fixed on Mr. Harrison, a quiet fire burning within them, fueled by years of dismissal and the urgent necessity of her mission. "The meaningless lines you've been overlooking, Mr. Harrison," Ilara stated, her voice clear and resonant, projecting throughout the cavernous hall. "They weren't just theoretical. They are a fundamental flaw in your entire paradigm, and they're about to be exposed. Your model of true art is obsolete." She stepped further forward, towards the stage, her movements deliberate and unwavering, her every step radiating quiet conviction. She held her battered sketchbook aloft, a beacon of defiance. Harrison, incandescent with rage, and a dawning, unwelcome tremor of professional fear moved to block her. "Security!" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the hall, tinged with a desperation that was uncharacteristic. "Remove this insane student. She's a disruptor, a fraud." Just as a burly event security guard began to move from the back of the room, Ilara reached the edge of the stage. With a swift, almost practiced motion, she pulled out her hidden compact prototype of a portable, high-definition projector from her satchel. Simultaneously, she tapped a discreet earpiece, her voice calm but firm as she spoke into a hidden mic connected to Leo, who was already positioned at a prearranged technical console backstage, having anticipated Ilara's audacious move. "Leo, prepare for emergency protocol. I'm taking manual override of the main display, initiating live data feed." She connected a small, inconspicuous data cable from her prototype projector to a nearby, seemingly innocuous podium port, bypassing the summit's main digital display system. The elegant graphics of classical masterpieces vanished, replaced by a stark, black screen that suddenly flashed with complex, pulsing data streams. "Your conventional art history," Eleanor stated, her voice resonating with quiet, unshakable command, "presumes a linear progression of form and a finite definition of beauty. But what if the source of true art is fractal? What if the solution to artistic stagnation is being overlooked from multiple unseen dimensions of visual and emotional potential?" With dazzling speed and precision, she activated her prototype, and its quiet hum filled a part of the hall, barely audible at first. Simultaneously, she began to manipulate the interface on her device. Elegant, fluid lines of real-time environmental data, ambient light, subtle air currents, even the unique sound frequencies within the room, flowed onto the immense screen behind her, overlaid with the stunning visual cryptography of her unique artistic system. Swirling fractals, interconnected nodes, and self-evolving geometric patterns, each corresponding to a specific algorithmic function within her art, now actively processed the sensory conditions of the hall. These doodles, as Harrison had scornfully called them, were now demonstrably active, a living, breathing testament to her revolutionary approach. Each stroke on her device's interface was deliberate, each line of data a precise hammer blow against the conventional, less dynamic models of art and perception. She filled the screen not with complexity for complexity's sake, but with an astonishing, almost frightening clarity that laid bare the fundamental oversight at the heart of Mr. Harrison's vulnerable, conventionally secured, artistic dominance. Her data projected unprecedented emotional resonance, capable of generating profound aesthetic experiences at a fraction of the effort, and at a scale that could genuinely redefine artistic boundaries. Then came the bated breath moment. Mr. Harrison, initially scoffing, his arms crossed, his face a mask of patronizing disbelief, suddenly froze. His eyes, fixed on the rapidly scrolling data and the intricate pulsing patterns that seemed to shift and evolve on the screen, widened imperceptibly. He saw the sheer volume of environmental variables being processed, the speed of the device's calculations, the undeniable precision of the visual output projections, a direct challenge to his core artistic tenets. He opened his mouth to retort, to dismiss it as a trick, but no sound came out. The security guard, halfway to the stage, paused, his brow furrowed, caught by the sheer audacity and inexplicable technical sophistication of Ilara's impromptu live demonstration. On stage, Mr. Harrison was mid-sentence, his hand raised to announce the final phase of his classical art initiative, when the immense digital display, now controlled by Ilara's prototype, flashed. It didn't just flicker to a new set of data. A series of angry red lines of code, clearly from the school's internal network, began to scroll frantically across the screen, overlaid with a stark, taunting message. "System compromised. Artistic paradigm depreciating. Your control is an illusion." This was not Ilara's doing, but the simultaneous cyber attack launched by a group of disillusioned former students and radical art activists, operating under the clandestine moniker, the avant-garde anarchists. They were hitting the school's online art archives and financial records precisely as Harrison was speaking, exposed and amplified by Ilara's accidental system override. The school's public website, which had previously displayed the prestigious list of Mr. Harrison's classical art accolades began to glitch and then plummeted into an alarming display of distorted, abstract images and flashing red alerts. A collective gasp swept through the gala, followed by an electrifying, horrified silence. Ms. Evelyn Reed, the cynical art critic, her eyes wide with a mix of horror and exhilaration, began furiously typing on her phone, her scandalous story about Harrison's art world dominance shifting dramatically. Simultaneously, in the hidden back room, the school's official IT team was in a frenzy, shouting about rapidly disappearing digital assets, unprecedented artistic data breaches, and seemingly impenetrable firewalls. "It's a full-spectrum digital art attack," yelled one frantic technician, his voice cracking. "They're corrupting our archives. Our legacy files are worthless." Leo, sweating and frantic at his prearranged console, stared at a screen displaying a cascade of encrypted data, recognizing the unique visual patterns of Alara's art embedded within the streaming environmental data. These patterns were now changing with blinding speed, not just demonstrating her device, but inadvertently creating a digital shield, an unexpected anomaly against the avant-garde anarchists' malicious code, by virtue of the sheer complexity and nonlinear logic of her system. He pointed frantically to Alara, who had just connected her prototype, her face grimly determined, now fully aware of the digital crossfire she had stumbled into. "It's her code. Her system is somehow disrupting their attack. You're the only one who can control this, Alara." Just as Mr. Harrison's artistic empire seemed irretrievably lost, as the school's digital art legacy plunged further into oblivion, Alara, with a final, almost imperceptible adjustment to a sequence of geometric patterns on her device's interface, executed a masterstroke. She wasn't just demonstrating her invention, she was leveraging its underlying, unique algorithm designed for complex pattern recognition and resource optimization to inadvertently neutralize the malicious cyber attack. The patterns on the main screen locked into place, transforming into a glowing, impenetrable fortress of visual code. On the main summit screen, the avant-garde anarchists' angry red message froze, then began to dissolve, replaced not just by Alara's own elegant green patterns of sustainable artistic flow, but by real-time data showing the school's digital assets plummeting, then inexplicably stabilizing, then slowly, agonizingly, beginning to recover as Alara's system inadvertently isolated and neutralized the deepest, most damaging elements of the avant-garde anarchists' digital assault, while simultaneously exposing Harrison's vulnerabilities for all to see. The hackers' attack not only halted, but their own malicious code seemed to recoil, their digital tools rendered ineffective by the sheer unexpected elegance of Alara's nonlinear system. This unexpected, devastatingly powerful reversal simultaneously silenced the hackers, salvaged the school from complete digital ruin, and stunned everyone by proving Alara's genius was not only in art, but in a profound, almost accidental understanding of complex, systemic vulnerabilities. Mr. Harrison's face contorted. The arrogance drained from him, leaving behind a pallor of utter intellectual devastation and a profound public humiliation. His eyes, usually sharp and dismissive, glazed over as he stared at the screen, then at Alara, his empire saved, yet fundamentally exposed and transformed, before his very eyes. Ms. Evelyn Reed's skeptical sneer dissolved into a look of astonished professional wonder, her prepared speech about classical art completely irrelevant. Principal Thompson's expression shifted from concern to bewildered pride, then a dawning realization of a far more incredible truth. The quiet student was not just an artist, but an accidental digital savior whose crazy invention had, ironically, prevented a total corporate collapse. The official school IT team's faces shifted from terror to awe, their frantic efforts replaced by the quiet hum of a system now stabilized by an unknown external force. The audience, initially confused by the flicker, erupted in a spontaneous, thunderous applause as the digital assets were confirmed, then slowly began to recover, unaware of the full digital war that had just taken place, but recognizing the restored, though now vulnerable, grandeur of the school, and the quiet, unassuming figure who had made it possible. For Alara, the victory was quiet but profound. The vindication of her true genius, the revolutionary nature of her art as a technological solution, and the ultimate triumph of underestimated talent over elitism, academic dogma, and superficiality. The thunderous applause for Alara, still ringing in the grand summit hall, was a death knell for Mr. Harrison's unassailable facade. He stood on stage, a visibly shaken man, his face a mask of utter humiliation, amidst the wreckage of his academic pretense and the near-digital ruin of the school's art archives. The international media initially focused on his grand pronouncements and the subtle instigation from Ms. Evelyn Reed, who was now frantically rewriting her entire report, her previous cynicism replaced by bewildered awe, swiveled their cameras. They captured the quiet, once-dismissed student who had not only unveiled a world-changing artistic theory, but had also, inadvertently, salvaged the school's plummeting digital legacy from a full-scale cyber attack, all while exposing Mr. Harrison's deep-seated prejudices. The online live stream of the summit, which had been recording the entire dramatic sequence, was quickly going viral, capturing every second of Mr. Harrison's unraveling and Alara's quiet yet profound triumph. Mr. Harrison's downfall. Mr. Harrison's downfall was swift, absolute, and brutally public. Within hours, clips of his dismissive comments about Alara's childish fantasies and meaningless scribbles were juxtaposed with live footage of her effortlessly stabilizing the school's collapsing digital art archives and demonstrating the revolutionary, resonant properties of her art. His pristine reputation as an infallible art educator and a discerning curator was not merely tarnished, it was shattered into a million pieces. His numerous interviews with prominent art education journals, where he had espoused on proven artistic models and established masters, while subtly mocking naive, unproven idealists, now served as damning testaments to his profound arrogance and intellectual blindness, fueling a firestorm of ridicule across traditional and social media platforms. Parents, unnerved by the public display of digital vulnerability, the near-catastrophic attack on the school's records, and Mr. Harrison's sheer arrogance that had almost cost the institution its digital legacy, began discreetly pulling their children from his classes. The art department, though digitally stabilized by Alara's accidental intervention, remained volatile, its future uncertain under Mr. Harrison's discredited leadership. School board members, alerted by the summit's chaos and the public outcry, launched immediate investigations into his rigid teaching practices and his attempts to suppress competing, unconventional artistic expressions. Student protests, fueled by a newfound appreciation for artistic freedom, crippled his remaining authority, as public sentiment overwhelmingly shifted towards supporting Alara's innovative, inclusive vision of art over Mr. Harrison's dogmatic, exclusionary approach. Mr. Harrison was forced to issue a humiliating public statement, a bitter acknowledgement of Alara's pivotal, albeit unexpected, role in averting a complete digital collapse and implicitly acknowledging the transformative potential of her unique artistic vision. This was a bitter pill for his ingrained elitism and towering ego. While the school's digital infrastructure was not completely ruined, thanks to Alara's unwitting intervention, Mr. Harrison's personal and professional standing plummeted. He became a pariah within the very academic and artistic circles he had so desperately sought to impress and dominate. He lost all that he had valued, his status, his accolades, his carefully constructed legacy, to the undeniable truth Alara had unveiled, not just about her art, but about the true cost of unchecked academic arrogance and intellectual rigidity. His pride, the very engine of his ambition, had consumed him, leaving only public shame and professional ruin in its wake. He was ultimately forced to resign from his position, his name now synonymous with a colossal failure of vision and ethics in the art world. Alara's new dawn. For Alara, the world shifted from dim lamplight to blinding brilliance. The sheer audacity, elegance, and undeniable efficacy of her resonant art, her unique symbolic language, and its unexpected digital capabilities immediately captivated the global scientific community and environmental organizations. Dr. Anya Sharma, the renowned art historian who had recognized the ancient origins of Alara's doodles, wasted no time. She immediately approached Alara, bypassing conventional academic and corporate hierarchies, with an offer that was both unprecedented and irresistible. She secured Alara a full scholarship to the prestigious Lumen Institute of Experimental Arts, an exclusive, progressive art academy known for fostering visionary and avant-garde artists, providing unprecedented creative control over a newly established division dedicated to interdisciplinary resonant art. This wasn't merely an academic opportunity. It was an invitation to transform her art into a legitimate, groundbreaking field of study, blending ancient knowledge with modern technology. She was no longer burdened by financial worries or the suffocating constraints of academic marginalization. Her cramped alleyway existence, her makeshift lab in her mind, and the constant struggle for basic necessities were exchanged for a spacious, state-of-the-art studio within the Lumen Institute's secure headquarters. Its walls, once bare, were soon adorned not with textbooks, but with groundbreaking new diagrams of her evolving resonant patterns and the intricate schematics of interactive art installations. She was given complete intellectual freedom, an unlimited budget for research and development, and the autonomy to build a team of brilliant, like-minded, and open-minded artists, scientists, and technologists, eager to explore the new frontiers of human perception and artistic expression she had unveiled. Her former struggles transformed into a position of profound influence, intellectual leadership, and artistic impact. Her quiet brilliance finally given the platform it deserved. A shared reflection. A few weeks after the summit, Ilara sat with Leo, her now official helper, and an invaluable collaborator, in the quiet solitude of her new studio at the Lumen Institute. The late afternoon sun streamed through a large skylight, dappling through the leaves of a towering fig tree in a planter, casting shifting patterns on the polished concrete floor. The air, unusually fresh for the city, carried the faint scent of charcoal and linseed oil, a comforting balm after the sterile environment of the summit. "You know, Ilara," Leo began, his voice soft, a warm, almost reverent smile on his face. "When I first saw your patterns in that sketchbook, and then watched you on that stage, it's not just a paradigm shift, it's a revolution. You've redefined what's possible in art and in how we perceive reality." To think, Harrison dismissed it as doodling from a quiet student. The irony is almost poetic. He gestured vaguely towards the window, where the city skyline shimmered. He thought he was protecting art, but he was just limiting it. Ilara traced a pattern on the condensation of her water glass, a habit that remained from her days of quiet contemplation, a tactile connection to the unseen world. It was always there, Leo. The numbers, the patterns in nature, the way reality organizes itself, the inherent language of the universe. People just couldn't see it because it didn't fit their predefined frameworks. Mr. Harrison couldn't see it because his ego and prejudice blinded him to any value outside his narrow, academically defined world. He saw art as something to be controlled, to be replicated, not something to be felt, to be discovered. "And your courage," Leo added, his voice soft but firm, "to stand up there, alone, against decades of entrenched academic thought and a man who could professionally crush you. That's as profound as your genius. Many brilliant minds get silenced because they lack that courage. It makes me wonder," Leo mused, his gaze sweeping over the cityscape, "how many other insignificant variables, how many other primitive scrawlings are waiting to be understood? How many other truths are being missed because we're too set in our ways, too quick to dismiss what doesn't fit our preconceived notions, or because it comes from a place we deem unworthy?" Their reflective dialogue, though brief, encapsulated the intricate journey they had shared, the unexpected twists of intellectual discovery, and the profound lessons learned about the nature of truth, the dangers of academic and social dogma, and the bravery it takes to challenge established norms for the greater good. Ilara looked out at the vibrant city, a subtle shift in her posture, reflecting her journey from a quiet, overlooked cleaner to a recognized intellectual leader and artistic visionary. The world no longer seemed a place of silent struggle, but one of boundless possibility, a world brimming with hidden patterns waiting to be understood, and problems waiting for compassionate solutions. "The universe is always whispering its secrets, Leo," she replied, a thoughtful glint in her eyes, "and humanity is always in need of its truths. We just have to be willing to listen, even when the whispers challenge everything we think we know, even when they come from a humble sketchbook in the hands of a quiet student." Her words, simple yet profound, resonated with the quiet strength she had discovered within herself, marking not just the resolution of a conflict, but the dawn of a new era of open inquiry and boundless intellectual exploration in a world now irrevocably altered by her unique vision and her crazy invention. 5 years later, the scent of ozone, mingled with the subtle fragrance of freshly stretched canvas and the quiet hum of advanced holographic projectors, filled Alara Vance's spacious minimalist studio. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a meticulously cultivated urban garden, illuminating a large, interactive display that showcased real-time global art data. Vibrant green where once there was artistic stagnation, a testament to her vision. Gone were the makeshift components and the harsh concrete of abandoned spaces. In their place, sleek, self-sustaining resonant art installations, the evolution of her crazy invention, were being meticulously designed and prototyped. Her once cramped existence in a forgotten alleyway was a distant memory, replaced by a workspace that pulsed with quiet intellectual energy and a profound sense of purpose. She still worked late into the night, driven by the same insatiable curiosity that had fueled her in solitude, yet now supported by a global team of brilliant artists, perceptive scientists, and innovative technologists, all eager to expand the reach and understanding of her groundbreaking aquafractal, now known as resonant art, technology. Alara Vance, once a solitary shadow dismissed by an arrogant teacher, was now a world-renowned pioneer, her system forming the cornerstone of a new global artistic paradigm. Alara was deeply committed to paying it forward. She understood the quiet despair of being overlooked, the burning frustration of having truth dismissed, and the profound impact of a single act of kindness or cruelty. Leveraging her position as the Chief Innovations Officer of the Lumen Institute's Interdisciplinary Resonant Art Division and the driving force behind the burgeoning resonant art movement, she established the Alara Vance Foundation for Unseen Art. This nonprofit organization provided generous grants, state-of-the-art studio space, and invaluable mentorship to aspiring artists, particularly those from marginalized communities or unconventional backgrounds, who were pursuing radical, potentially paradigm-shifting ideas in art and perception that might otherwise be stifled by traditional corporate or academic structures. She ensured these aspiring minds had the financial freedom, intellectual support, and access to resources she had so desperately lacked during her own formative years. Her mentorship program, affectionately known as the Canvas Weavers, actively sought out students and researchers who saw connections where others saw only disparate fields, fostering an environment where daring questions and unorthodox approaches to art, science, and engineering were celebrated, not suppressed. She believed that every individual held a unique internal artistic language, and her foundation sought to provide the tools and freedom for those voices to emerge. She frequently gave public lectures, not just on the intricate theories behind her resonant art, but on the importance of intellectual honesty, artistic courage, and the necessity of questioning established norms. Her voice, once soft and hesitant, now carried a powerful message that resonated far beyond the confines of the art world, inspiring countless individuals to trust their unique visions and challenge the status quo in their own fields. She often spoke of the hidden patterns in the universe, the fractal truths that reveal themselves when one is willing to look beyond conventional boundaries and embrace solutions from unexpected sources, from the doodles of the dismissed to the profound insights of the overlooked. Her personal story, now a public legend, served as a powerful testament to her philosophy. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Alara stood before a packed auditorium at the prestigious Global Art Symposium in Venice, a forum that, years prior, Mr. Harrison had only ever dreamed of attending, still touting his traditionalist art dogma in a small high school. But today, the air in the Venetian hall was vibrant with eager anticipation, not stifling academic orthodoxy. She was explaining a particularly complex aspect of her resonant art technology, her fingers gliding across a vast interactive display, sketching an elegant, swirling, self-evolving equation. It was the very equation that years ago Mr. Harrison had scorned as doodling, the visual representation of the algorithm that had not only brought profound aesthetic experiences to galleries worldwide, but had, inadvertently, shielded his school's digital archives from utter collapse, revealing his profound oversight and securing a future for his, now very different, art department. The symbolism was not lost on the audience. She paused, turning to the diverse audience, a mix of seasoned art historians, curious philanthropists, and eager young artists from every corner of the globe, her eyes alight with the same quiet passion that had driven her through countless lonely nights in a damp alleyway. "This equation," she said, gesturing to the glowing symbols behind her, which pulsed with a soft internal light, was once dismissed as mere doodling. It was considered unconventional, impractical, even crazy, because it didn't fit neatly into existing frameworks of artistic expression or technological understanding. It challenged everything we thought we knew about the very nature of art, its creation and its impact, and even digital resilience. But the natural world, much like the digital realm, doesn't care about our preconceptions or our academic structures. It simply is. She smiled, a profound, knowing smile that carried the wisdom of her extraordinary journey. Our task, as innovators, as artists, as problem solvers, isn't to force the world into our existing frameworks, but to listen to its whispers, to follow the truth wherever it leads, no matter how uncomfortable or revolutionary it may seem. Sometimes, the most robust solution is the one that looks like a piece of abstract art. Sometimes, the most profound breakthrough comes from the most unexpected place, from a voice that was once utterly dismissed, from a sketchbook filled with the meaningless scribbles of a quiet student. The equation, now widely accepted and taught as fundamental in advanced artistic theory, computational aesthetics, and even interdisciplinary studies worldwide, was not merely a formula. It was a living, breathing symbol of the profound shift she had brought about. It was a beacon of truth illuminating a new path for global understanding and human cooperation between disciplines. Alara stood at the nexus of a thriving intellectual and humanitarian community, no longer confined to the shadows of an alley, but a guiding light for the future of art, technology, human ingenuity, and global well-being. She had not only disproven a dismissive teacher's prejudiced judgment, but in doing so, had opened up an entirely new dimension of human potential, proving that even the most quiet and unassuming voices, armed with truth and unwavering conviction, can echo with the loudest, most world-changing impact, perpetually seeking the next uncharted frontier of knowledge and beauty. Her art had indeed secured a fortune, not just for herself, but for a world in desperate need of a second spring, a renewal of vision and spirit. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.